in
Welcome to
Hagerstown.
Just Lookin Gallery. I'm Eileen, the owner, and we're here today for another episode of Articulations with artist Preston Sampson.
Good evening, afternoon to everyone. I thank you for having me, Eileen.
So, Preston, talk a little bit about how old you were when you first started realizing art might be a career.
Ooh, 49. No, let me see. That's a good question. I mean, I never really thought of it as being like a career or as like monetary career, but I always knew that it would be something I'd be doing.
But you were going to go to art school.
No, not really. I was not thinking about art school. I was just thinking about school in general. I mean, painting and drawing is something that was in the family, so I did it all the time. But I wasn't necessarily going to come to the University of Maryland to study art.
Well, you started, you were going to go to Morgan.
I was going to go to Morgan.
And then you ended up at Maryland.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to go to Morgan, and I came to, my sister was in grad school at University of Maryland at College Park, and I went with her one day to visit campus, and I fell in love with College Park, and that was it.
Okay.
Yeah, you know.
So were you already going to major in art at Morgan?
I had no idea what I was going to major. I was just going to college. And I was probably going to go do advertising, or I was going to do something that I thought may have been tangible, to use my artwork in a newspaper or something. So I didn't know. Believe it or not, I even thought about going to law school.
Well,
I would have been a great.
You would have been a wonderful lawyer.
Yeah, I would have argued anybody down except you. I'd have lost that fight. But no, I didn't know what I wanted to do. But then I just started taking art classes in Maryland.
Is that how it crystallized? You still weren't majoring in anything?
Nope, I knew, I took art history, art classes.
So talk about some of your professors.
Okay, first professors were Pat Craig, Chip Richardson, and Dr. Driscoll was the chairman of the department.
Right.
But I didn't really know that. But I had those two, and then printmaking. There's a really wonderful printmaker here, Gail Shaw Clemens. Are you familiar?
Mm-mm.
You know, she was a grad assistant in Maryland when I was sophomore, and I had her class with Lipinski.
Okay.
With stone litho. I was doing stone
Nice.
litho. Yeah, I used to love stone litho. So she was there, but it was Lipinski was my professor.
Who was the biggest influence? Professor or non-professor?
At Maryland, I would say, I'll tell you this. There was a professor, and she was in the design department, Rhonda Williams of Ferguson. I don't know what she's been so many last name, Bristol. Rhonda Williams was her name, I think. But she taught me how to do women's eyes. And I was sophomore, but she was encouraging.
Well,
I mean,
then I'll definitely thank her for that.
Absolutely, yeah. So she's down in Key West now. But the influence, I would say, it was so many of them. I'd say it's a good part. I think the thing about artists is it's a mix of people. It's sort of like musicians. You know, you have a little of this, a little of that. And I think Chip and Pat Craig definitely were influences. They were my first professors at Maryland.
Among the masters, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
who did you admire the most? Who do you admire the most?
You mean the masters that I've been, formally associated with?
Well,
like
or the
at
ones
Maryland?
that you've seen in museums.
Oh,
No, I mean,
man, I
I'm not talking about European masters.
Right,
or
I
American
understand.
masters.
Yeah, I would say at Maryland, of course. Dr. Driscoll was first and foremost who introduced me to possibilities about different kinds of art. Horace Pippin, which I thought was horrible. I was like, this man can't draw. I said, this is the worst thing I've ever. Jacob Lawrence. I'm like, yeah, where's his hand? Why is he like?
Well,
I didn't know. But he taught me as an 18, 19-year-old kid, William H. Johnson. These are the people, Beard.
Lauren and I were talking about William H. Johnson earlier.
Yeah, I think one of the greatest designers. I think his composition and design work is so
William
beautiful.
H. Johnson did classical painting.
Absolutely,
and it's not what he's known for.
I know, yeah. It's just like, Picasso with his blue figures, and even Norman Lewis. People realize
he
that
was a realist, as was Joe Holston.
Yeah, and they changed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think, and that's the thing about evolution of artists and artwork, more things that you become familiar with, the more you see. Then I would say the guy who really, kind of excited my art. I think was what's his name? Sam Gilliam.
Okay.
I really.
But your art is nothing
no,
like
no,
his.
not at all. As a matter of fact, funny story. He had an open studio on the first floor of the art social building. I used to go in there. I used to harass him all the time, and he'd have stuff laying on the floor. And I'd say, man, this would be nice if that was a person. Why don't you let me draw and make a person out of this scrap? And there would be some pieces that kind of like trash, but then I say I need to do something with it.
The trash that's now going for $300,000.
Yeah, but I mean, he was doing this stuff raking through,
Right.
like with Liv, and I was like, what is this crazy stuff? A little bit, but I would say, but Sam was an interesting person. For me as a young guy who showed, he talked so much smack, and that you'd have to like parse through some of the things that he would say. But no, he was brilliant, and as a art historian and a person who really knows a lot about different art forms and whatnot.
So when you got out of school,
Mm-hmm.
where'd you go? What'd you do?
Slept on couches. Let me see. What did I do? Come out of school. Okay, it took me forever to get out of school.
You liked Maryland so much.
I did, but I didn't like it that much. But it was, as my sister would say, the circuitous route through college. It was. I stopped and worked once. I got a job. Maybe as a sophomore, I got a job as a graphic artist at Reuben H. Donnelly.
Okay.
Which was, he was the ad agency. And I was like, hey, I'm going pro. I said, this is what I want to be doing. This is design, so I did that. But I went back to school. So, when I got out of school, what did I do? I did a number of odd jobs. I worked for newspapers.
Were you steady painting?
Always. Never stopped. I've always did my work, but I didn't know where it was going. I didn't have any idea.
Do you have sketchbooks?
Oh, of course, yeah. Sketchbooks, any number of things. Matter of fact, 1984, when the Macintosh computer came out. Matter of fact, that was one of my first jobs, was government computer news. And I was a hack. And I can't say the word that I want to say or any kind of, but I was a gopher. It's a nice way.
Okay.
To put it. But they would let me do stuff at these FOSSI conventions. You remember those at the convention center? That was IT stuff, and you were just starting to learn how to draw with the mouse. The Mac, that was brand new technology. So I would not do my job and go when they had the demonstrations on what you can do with a mouse. I said, I can draw with this. So I do that. I worked for that newspaper. Then I did a number of odd jobs, and I was a courier.
Not including family, how old were you when you sold your first painting?
20.
It's not bad.
Not bad, yeah. And it was one of my friends. And then I used to sell. Anthony Young bought a piece for me for $100 in 1980. It was a lithograph that I did with Lipinski's class. It was a beautiful, big stone thing. And then I did that, and I did a lot of little pieces for people here and there. But at Maryland also too, I had a commission for the John Thompson show.
Okay.
Then I did the triptych of John with a towel over his shoulder and two players on the side, and somebody at Maryland painted over my painting.
What?
Mm-hmm. So you talking about I love Maryland,
Okay. You loved Maryland at some point in your life.
Yeah. But that was
you
was
stayed
pretty
in
tough.
touch with Driscoll for years, obviously.
Absolutely, yep, and a lot of my professors, and Maryland was a really good influence for me, and I'm glad I went. I learned a lot, and I wouldn't trade that experience.
We met in 1990, and
I thought it was 1936.
might have been. Feels like it. And one of the things I appreciated was that you were doing strong male imagery, which in 1990, be it in print or original, was really hard to find. What put you in that direction?
Always. I'll tell you, the genesis of it is a little sepia tone photo. And in my den growing up in my house, there's a little picture of my granddad and his two brothers. They built the nation.
Right.
A big sepia tone photo, and it was sitting on the thing. And all my life I saw that picture. All my life. And I said, man, I sit and look at that little picture. Because we didn't have, think about it, unlike these young kids now, who have videos and all that stuff. We didn't have nothing to do. Come on, it's in that generation, you had to make your own entertainment. So it was not even TV. I mean, it was, but it was one channel, one or two channels. So it was not like you could sit in front of the TV. You had to do something. So we were always encouraged to do something. So I look at this little picture and make up stories. My family, everybody had some other stuff going on. Like my sister's a writer, one's a musician, my dad was a musician at one point. It was just a creative house. So they would be making up skits, plays, making up voices, characters, all kinds of things all the time in my house. So when I see that picture, I'd come up with things and say, who are these guys? They look like cowboys, blah, 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 blah. So when I went to college, I had a painting class. It was oil painting, and I had to do a painting. The first thing I said, okay, I'm going to paint my granddad. That guy with the big crazy looking hat, the doe sleepy eyes. It was oil painting class. I painted him. That was my first ever painting. And
where is it now?
It's at a friend's father. It's another long story, but he is one of my mentors, George Barrick, who was, instrumental too in my career. He was a painter, portrait painter, unbelievable painter in Columbia, Maryland. But he got that painting from me. He gave me one of my first shows up in Baltimore.
Nice.
At the Arena Players Theater or whatever, yeah. They had a little gallery there. And he took my work and framed it and put it up.
What year was that?
Oh, wow. That must have been 1982,
Okay.
83. And before then, I'd had another show at Maryland at the Nimburu Center, which was the Black Cultural Arts Center at Maryland. Otis Williams, bless his heart. He gave me and Dwayne Graves, we had a show called Aspirations. And it was in the dining hall of the University of Maryland, but in the Black Student Union. And he gave me a show, and that was the first time I saw my work on the walls, from the things under the bed and little drawings I had. And I did that, and so that's the first time I got to see my work on the wall, framed.
What year did you realize you could support yourself as a painter?
When I figure that out, I'll let you know. No, okay, I would say probably, I'd say 1990 probably started.
I'd say right around the time we met.
Yeah, 90 kind of turned the corner from saying, oh, wow, really? I went to Florida. For, my cousin down there is Dr. Kathy Lowe. She's like a really big collector down in West Palm, and she'd have these artist showcases in West Palm Beach, and she invited me. And you know who really gave me a boost during that time was Adolphus Ely.
Nice.
Yeah, Adolphus was associated with the gallery that I was in. It was Gallery Francois F. Claytor. It's on 14th Street downtown in D.C. And so Adolphus was connected with them. So I was in Florida. And in one of these, those fairs, kind of art fairs with the booths and everything, and Adolphus had this guy with him, and they came by my booth, and the guy said, what do you think? And he said, and I'm like, my man, Adolphus. So he was advising,
Nice.
Who knows who this guy was. But that was, and I came back, and I could almost say, not quite, but I could almost say I was never broke after that.
First time I walked into the Barnett Aiden collection,
Mm-hmm.
and they closed not long after I discovered them,
Yeah.
But God, that place was amazing.
Unbelievable. And and I
Why don't we have that in D.C. now?
We got you. That's a good
DC
start.
Extended, how's that?
Oh, I know, exactly. Yeah, no, it is really a shame. And why isn't there Barnett Aiden? Well, the importance of what you're doing.
But the importance of Barnett Aiden, though, was, they kind of started the black art scene in D.C.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, Adolphus Ely, man, and there's one holdover from his camp is Ed Pratt, who's down in Florida, who was with Adolphus for many years. He's a really knowledgeable guy. He's trying to keep it going.
And young collectors have no idea about any of that.
Oh, I know. They don't know. Yeah. They don't. And that's why I think
And there's not enough written about it either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it needs to definitely be more documentation for
Absolutely.
our work. And the deal is...
Because I don't even think Driscoll really documented that.
Not so much. I mean, I think he had certain things, you know. I mean, when they started doing the Porta Colloquium,
Right.
you know.
You do a lot of different mediums. What's the one medium that you've never done that you would like to?
Wow. Let me see. I damn near done it all. Let me see. Well, not quite. Let me see. Coleograph, maybe.
Okay.
But out of all of the things, yeah, because I've done etching, I've done stone litho, I've done laser litho, I've done encaustic pulp painting, work on wood, work on glass. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, what was that? One movie said, John Lennon said, "Give me a tube, I'll make some music." So you give me something, I'll make some art.
There you go. But the last couple of years, well, as the gallery's grown, it's like everything kind of, it's that karmic fall into place.
Yeah.
My artists, are carrying the gallery along just like we've carried them along in the early years.
Yeah, well,
I mean, everybody, I think everybody that's really good in this business, be it gallery, art dealer, artist, the last 3-4 years have just started being that magical time again.
Yeah, so I think, and I also think it has something to do with like a general awareness of, through some of the negativity this year that people understand.
Well,
I think that, for instance, the thing I'm working on, the blackmailed concept. I think that finally, I mean, after all these years, that even the most, reluctant people or institutionally white folks are saying, wait a minute, maybe they got a point.
Well, I mean, diversity's been being discussed in museums forever. This is the first period that we're getting black curators. We're getting black, in major museums.
Right.
So that's going to change everything too. I think that's what drove the last Swan auction because those prices were out of control.
Well, that's good.
And I think a lot of it was institutional. So all of that, it just all elevates. So
you see a sea change in the art world.
In the black art world. Because
black
remember
art.
what Charlie said, there's the art world and then there's black art. There's art
Right.
and we keep being separated, which is still the part that doesn't work. That's the part we're still, we've been fighting this forever.
Absolutely, and I'm sure it won't. It's not over either.
That part's not going to
Right.
change.
Right.
Black
of course.
art will still be discussed outside the mainstream of art.
And even though how much artists may protest, different artists that to contend that it's supposed to be this post-black era, that there's no black art versus art, and then there's to a degree as art. It's not. However, but in the market, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a separation. Some of my white artist friends don't know who David Driscoll is. They don't know William Johnson is. They don't know.
Yeah.
It's not aware.
I mean, it's sad because,
Okay.
we take it for granted from going to museums and everything. Oh, so we know
Right.
who Monet is. We know who all these people
Right.
are.
But they don't know.
And there's still way too much elitism in the art world.
I'd say that again. And the people sometime now who driving these crazy prices,
Right.
they got their own game. It's elitist market, and they want to keep. They create artists.
Remember when we were
income.
talking years ago about using all those terms that sort of automatically
Oh.
push you away, as a collector? Somebody starts talking about, oh, well, this is such a great example of postmodern, whatever. What does that mean?
No.
It's either a painting you love or it's a painting you don't.
Exactly.
So, do you really care if that's expressionism or impressionism or any of those things when you're standing in front of it? From a scholarly standpoint, sure. It's nice to know the difference between them. But does it matter when you fall in love with a piece of art?
No.
Yeah, and unfortunately, who's that? Somebody told me recently. Some people fall in love with art with their eyes, and other ones with their ears. And I'm much more with an eye person than an ear.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
And that's a really good point.
Yeah, it is, and I'm tend to be much more rustic. And
I'm totally driven
What would you
by.
say to a new artist? If you had to school a new artist today, or what would you say to him or her?
don't do it. I would say no. No. It's funny you say that because I do have an assistant now. He's a really talented young lady that I preach to her nonstop, and I just try to tell her the thing that the old folks would tell her: keep working. The truest thing of all time.
Yeah.
And you know that sounds so simple and sounds so over simple and cliche, but keep working. Nobody cares about what you're doing. Keep working. Nobody like this. They didn't like it. Keep working. You feel like nothing's going on. Keep, because you never know. And the more you work, the more the ideas have to go through stages, and they have to go through learning process. One thing that I always feel like, I remember two unnamed artists, very well-known people. One would say about the other one, he needs to watch what he lets out of his studio. And I think about that, and this person who he's talking about needs to watch what he's just sold like a $2 million piece. I will not name names, you know. But, okay, but there's a point, I think, as an artist, and I don't care what anybody says, artists are always experimenting. They should be. They should be.
Right.
You should be taking chances, and some of them don't work. Some of them you swing and miss. Some you don't. You know, that wasn't. You know, I think about a concept that people ask me about. Is it finished? Is it finished? Well, I always say I'd rather do less than more. You know, I mean, with just
Carl Owens was the prime example of never putting an extra brush stroke, pencil stroke, anything on. You know, when it was done.
It's done, and you
never
know
went back, never revisited it. That was it. Done, signed.
Well, I can't say that much because you know I will get it back and paint on it. You know, but it's like if you change, you know, pay a place where you are, and you see something that you did 5 years ago, and you be like, wait a minute.
Right.
And I was wrong on this, so I don't want to do that. So I see why I should have done this. I will do whatever I want to do.
But that's still part of you.
Yeah, and so it's a process.
You know,
so,
I mean, I love doing retrospectives of artists, you know, for particular artists, because I love saying, oh, well, this was 25 years ago. This is 50 years, you know, for the older artists, this is 50 years ago. You know, when I look at it, there's no way I can say that's not great art here.
Right.
It's just, it's different now.
Right.
Yeah, and I think
I mean, I think whatever drives artists to keep producing, even when things are bad. I mean, you do it because you have to do it.
Yeah, and you do, and it's like you're in different places at different times.
Absolutely.
And you'll see something that turns you on, you know, and makes you say, oh, wait a minute, I want to try that. I want to see how to make this medium work. I saw somebody do this somewhere, and I liked this part of what they were doing. And I think that's no different from being a musician, from being a writer.
How'd you get into pulp paper, which by most people's definition is not an easy medium?
Oh, it did. Well, when they would be correct. I mean, it's extremely difficult. It's
so what made you, I mean...
Well, okay, I'll tell you, here's a story. In 1999, I got a grant to do a commission of monotypes with for Duke Ellington's 100th centennial celebration. So that would have been 1999. I got a grant to go to Pyramid Atlantic, and I was supposed to do monotypes. And I got there, and they weren't ready for me. They were like, oh, we were expecting you next week. And I'm like, well, I'm here this week. So they thinking on their feet. They say, you know what? Why don't you go work with Nicole, who was a pulp painter, and go just do that while we get ready for you. So and that was like 3 for a week. It was a week. And I'm like, man, I'm blowing my week doing this stuff I don't even want to do. So I go back there in this paper making mill, and this little girl about this big, you know, she's like talking. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't care. And I don't want to do this. So I'm not interested in this. It sucks. This is bullshit. I'm not down. So she's showing me, and so we're doing all of this stuff. I'm doing these pulp paintings, and I'm like, wow, why am I doing this? and you know, we do them. Okay, so I get them done.
Pulp painting.
That's part of the pulp painting. I do the pulp painting, and I take them I had an exhibit. And I just said, this is whatever, nothing's going to happen. But they were kind of slick. You know, they look different. Because when you're doing what you think you're seeing, first of all, it's a printmaking technique.
Right.
Because you're doing down, and it goes through a press. So technically, it can be considered a printmaking. Because the work that I have at Yale is a pulp painting. There's 2 pulp paintings, and it's in the paper and prints.
Really?
You know, yeah,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, so.
It's just a really, you can explain the process a little bit, but it's just,
It's different.
That's different.
It's a painstaking process, though, and
It
you
is.
don't know what you're going to get, which I think for a lot of artists would be really frustrating.
And well, it was frustrating to me the first time, and it's still frustrating. I won't say frustrating. It's a hard room. You know, it's a tough room, and it's a place to. It's not a place to work out your problems. You know what I'm saying? With as an artist, because there's gonna be other problems that it creates. So you gotta kind of know what you're doing. At least for me, I'll speak for myself. That when I go in, it's got to be the image has got to be as simple as possible, and it's still not gonna work. It's gonna be something else from what you thought. And so, even among that, I think it turns out to be really interesting. I was with Helen Frederick, who kind of started pulp painting institution down here, Pyramid. She started out. And I made a comment to her. I said, well, you know, I usually go with simple subjects. And she said, I wouldn't consider your work simple ever on any context, even with a single, you know, portrait or something very, because it's other stuff. You know what, I think of a painting as being a series of abstract paintings. For me, I mean, they're like 50 paintings on one painting. If you do the little lens thing, you know, you lens finder, and that's my association with art. And I always go back to, you know, some artists who I really admire, who were like, you know, like de Kooning and folks like that, who were just like, pow, there it is, you know, immediate. And not, I think when you know, I don't like laboring and working over things, and because then it starts getting lost in, I think, some of the spontaneity and the looseness and the beauty of the line, and so it will be different. But no, pole painting, I got into doing that like that, and it's really probably my favorite thing to do.
What got you into encaustic?
Funny story, but maybe not funny to the people who had the. I did a project in 2002. It was with Arlington County Artworks. It was working with kids. Michelle McCallum, she was the director of the program at Arlington County. So then she moved on to Baltimore, extended ed, you know, community college, Baltimore County. And she said, hey, Preston, so my encaustic teacher quit, you know, and the class is like next Saturday. Can you please figure out how to do this? I thought about you because I said your pulp paintings are just like encaustic, kind of, sort of. And, you know, and I'm like, this is my friend. I said, hey, sure, why not? So I started to look on the YouTube encaustic. I go to look, and I was like, I don't know what this is. So I go teach this class. And I made the mistake of telling the people, I say, look, I don't know what I'm doing. I say, so we're all learning together, okay? And for your money, you paid for this class, but come on. Come on, this is the spirit. Come on, let's go. And there was a kid in the class who knew way more than I did. And he kind of sort of led, well, you know, you can do this. I'm like, oh, really? Thanks. Yeah. All right, like you said, we can do this. So I scraped away and did this encaustic. The very first, this one woman was so pissed. She was like, so we're teaching you, paying you to learn, while I was like, come on, give me a break. I shouldn't even done this class. The very first one I did, sold was the outstanding collection, you know, and I was like, wow, but it was beautiful because you have to carve into it, and it's sculptural. And I always like sculpture. I like mixed media. And sometimes I use photographs in them, sometimes not. And sometimes I put a little small piece. You know, you can get to be a mixed media artist. But anyway, that was, I can't remember what year that was, probably 2010.
Did Bill get a chance to ask you what some of the other things that you had attached to the flag were?
No.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
If you'd been here earlier, he would have seen.
Bill.
Bill is, how do you explain Bill?
Bill is unique. But what are some of these symbols in this painting?
Some of these symbols in the paintings, they're like African, they're part of kente cloths and their flags, the different African flags. See, because I always think that, you know, the flag is such a, to me, and not only those, I've done several pieces with flags. I mean, I love the flag. I do, which is kind of a conflict, but I think it's a great symbol. It's a great graphic. I think stars and stripes, they're graphics. They are great, something to play with. But now that's just from a pure visual standpoint. But from a sociological and everything else, we all know, so much ambiguity about how African Americans, deal with the flag, and about the kneel, and then how certain people wrap themselves in the flag to mean that they're these great Americans, at the exclusion of other people. But to me, I think I've always thought that African Americans were some of the most patriotic, and like my father's generation. One of the most prideful things he had was his Boy Scout card. A literal Boy Scout card. He was a Boy Scout. I mean, a Boy Scout leader, and he was proud of that. He served in the service. I mean, black men built this country literally, and I think that we very connected with this country. So to be made to always feel like an outsider, and a person who's not welcome or you're different, I'm like, nah, y'all are different. Not us. I mean, come on, we've been here involuntarily since back in the day, yeah. So
other than the other darker skinned people that we chased all the
absolutely. Well, they weren't darker than us though. They were
the
brown.
Seminoles were dark.
Some of them were. Or are.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, are, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Seminoles, they're Florida, so
yeah,
they're really
absolutely, yeah, no.
Plus, slaves jumping ship, they took them in.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Florida was a free state. Florida had you know about Rosewood, they
They said the Seminoles were really proud. They never lost any of the slaves that had managed to swim to shore back into slavery.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, that's, man, there's some,
the government didn't want to take the Seminoles on. They were one of the fiercer tribes, too.
And don't get me started on Chief Osceola. It's my man. He was the guy, the dude. But, I don't know, but, this whole flag thing, I just think it's a conflict. And the title of this piece is Citizen X. I remember when I was conflicted. And now it's like, not so much. You know exactly where you stand with these people, And so it's...
So you think the last few years have brought clarity?
Yep, I do. I think it's brought a deeper understanding of who they are.
So, all right. Obviously, you also do still lifes and other things besides people, though not near often.
Yeah.
It's always that hit. Do you feel as a black man you have a duty to help give a voice to things?
Absolutely. But I think, as an artist, you have a duty to express your thoughts. And no matter what those thoughts are, I mean, some political, some apolitical, some beauty. I think really now, for me personally, I want to revisit beauty. I think, that there's so much heaviness, so much intensity, so much, of this like brooding, like foreboding work, but that's part of our reality. But the other part of it is the other stuff too. It's still fun. It's still beauty in the world. It's still relationships. There's still flowers. There's birds. There's landscapes. There's things that everything. So I don't think everything. I have somebody that we know. They say, well, when your work, you have your work be about something. I'm saying it's always about something.
Yeah.
I mean, so I say it still may be about something that you think it ought to be about, or even something that's topical. You know how the evolution of the bullet case and the losing my religion.
Yeah.
That wasn't a conscious, I'm going to do something for the guy. No, it happened.
But those are some of those striking pieces.
Yeah,
and
to be honest, and those bullet pieces you just sold to me. When I first saw them, I'm like, wow, because there's some of those striking work, whether you were conscious of it or not, or they said something. They say a lot.
Well, it's interesting because obviously
I've never seen that work from you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, Preston and I, share collectors. He has collectors here that, also have met him multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And some of his collectors would come in when that piece was on the wall and wouldn't realize it was Preston and do a double take.
Yeah.
Or I'd say, they'd walk past it, and I'd say, oh, what do you think of Preston's latest piece? That's Preston.
And I like it, but
and I love that aspect, too,
right.
because it also keeps collectors, as a collector, it keeps us saying, whoa, what's
Right.
next?
I don't want you to see me coming from a mile away, what I mean? And that happened, but organically and honestly and just is in a stream of conscious. But then if I want to do work on newspaper and, about, cats, that's also, I'm going to do that too.
Yes, I did. I was about to bring that. No, I gave that, you made me give that back years ago.
I haven't seen that cat.
Well, I'm sorry, but you got it back years ago. I probably have paperwork. I probably made you sign. Well,
Really?
it left home because it wouldn't be here.
Look, I won't need that one of those
It's making its
things
way up the road.
Look, I need
Where's
those
my
things
cat? I lost
stapled
my
up
cat.
on the
It was this
pole.
really cool cat, kind of semi-abstract.
But he was on the Spanish tile. I did that in Spain. Yeah,
and it was
he was
just
on the
this
tiles.
cool piece.
Yeah, he was. And I don't know what happened to that cat. I mean, I know you gave it back, but I don't know where it is.
Yeah.
But see, that I'm going to steal that landscape back. So
And that's not a landscape, by the way, so you can't steal it back.
Hey, where's my boudoir piece? I